passages that I've put together at my website, douglashamp.com. Ask and you will receive. We're looking at Matthew 16. You know, Jesus said to watch out for the leaven of the Pharisees. And basically, the disciples were scratching their heads, saying, "What is he talking about?" But Jesus, being aware of it, said to them, "O you of little faith, why do you reason among yourselves because you have brought no bread? Do you not yet understand or remember the 5 loaves of the 5,000, and how many baskets you took up? Nor the 7 loaves of the 4,000, and how many large baskets you took up? How is it you do not understand that I do not speak to you concerning bread, but to beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees? Then they understood that he did not tell them to beware of the leaven of bread, but of the doctrine of the Pharisees and the Sadducees." What is Jesus getting at in this passage? You know, is it the Pharisees were doing something bad or the Sadducees? Well, it's the doctrine, right? There's some doctrine that Jesus is saying to watch out for. But what does this have to do with bread? Okay, so Jesus says, "Hey, watch out for the leaven of the Pharisees." They're like, "Oh my goodness, we're in the boat. We forgot to bring bread. Maybe he's telling us that we didn't bring bread or something, right?" And so Jesus, you kind of feel like he's this incredibly patient teacher. He's like, "Come on, guys. I mean, I keep telling you this stuff, and you're not getting it." You can kind of have this gentle rebuke that's happening. At least that's how I read it. Is there's this gentle rebuke. Why do you reason among yourselves because you've not brought no bread? He says, "Don't you understand? Don't you remember the 5 loaves? 5 loaves, okay, 5 loaves of bread, and the 5,000 people, well, 5,000 men plus women and children that it fed, and how many baskets you took up." So again, they have no food. All these people are hungry. Where are they going to get food to feed these people? Well, a little boy has 5 loaves, right? And he then shares it with everybody. Now, one of the really stupid theories out there is that, when he got out his sack lunch, then everybody got out their sack lunch. I mean, that's just absolutely stupid. What happened is Jesus took that. What did he do? He gave thanks to God, and somehow that bread multiplied. Isn't that amazing? Now, I've been talking in other videos about maybe we have a simulated universe, all these really cool ideas to ponder. But the bottom line is that God's universe operates in ways that are far cooler than we can ever imagine. And as I see it, Jesus was trying to instill in his disciples a sense of wonder and awe, and he was training them in how to do those miracles. That's why he says in John chapter 14, "If whoever believes in me will do the same miracles that I've been doing and even more." Right? So it's not it's not a question of whether we can. He's telling us you can do these things, and he was training the disciples so that they would do it. But what was it that they were not getting? Well, it was the doctrine of the Pharisees. What is the doctrine of the Pharisees? Well, the Pharisees were, in many respects, the Pharisees and the Sadducees were in many respects the good guys. I mean, at least the Pharisees, not the Sadducees. But the Pharisees were the good guys. Why? Because they took God's word seriously. They studied it. They were zealous for it. The Sadducees were really not. They said, well, if it's not in the first 5 books, then we don't believe it. All right, so they basically threw out all the prophets, okay, and they did not believe in the supernatural. They did not believe in the resurrection. So they were pretty much your liberals of the day. But the Pharisees were good guys, so to speak. They were sort of like the Baptists of the day, right? You think of somebody who loves the Bible, the Baptists, right? They're very serious about it. They carry it every time they go to church. They carry that Bible. That's a good thing, right? But what happens? Well, we get lost in our own systematic theology. In other words, we say, we have written volumes on this thing called the Bible, and we've understood it, and we've dissected it, and here's how it works. And so we have a systematic theology for pretty much everything. And that is really what was happening back in the days of the Pharisees. They had their systematic theology figured out, and if it wasn't in their systematic theology, then it basically didn't exist. And I believe that is what Jesus is saying is like, you guys are not believing. You were there. You were handling this stuff, and yet you're not believing it. You're not really letting the reality of this miracle, this incredible event sink down deep into your psyche to transform the way you see the world, the way you see, the modus operandus, right, of how things can be done. You're not getting it. And now you're all stressed out about the fact that we don't have any bread in the boat. Don't you get it? Don't you get that it's not about bread? It's much bigger than that. That God does amazing things, and He uses us as part of that process. You say, well, God can do whatever He wants. Well, of course He can. But that's not how He works. He works in conjunction with you and I. He likes to work with us. He likes to do stuff so that we're working together as a cooperative. It's all by His power. It's all by His wisdom. But He doesn't just foist things upon us and make us do it. He lets us be part of that process. That is what is so empowering about this. And yet the disciples were not grasping this. And so they were, again, stressed out about, we don't have any bread in the boat. What are we going to do? And then even after Jesus had given thanks for that bread and it was multiplied, they even had 12 baskets left over. Ample proof that they had more than was, humanly possible. That they had all this left over. They only started with 5 loaves. Okay, we're not talking about a lot of food here. We're talking, 5 loaves. How much can that feed? Well, I don't know, maybe 2, 3 people, 4, 5 if you ration it. But they had 12 baskets left over after they had fed 5,000 men plus women and children. So we're probably looking at least, probably close to 20,000 people that were fed from 5 loaves. And the point here is it was not just something that Jesus did back in the day. You see, this is, I kind of grew up as a Baptist, so I have some understanding here, is that, there's this idea that the miracles that Jesus did were only done in His day simply to authenticate His message. And they have no other purpose. They do not transcend time. Basically, those gifts and that spirit of miracles, if you will, ended when Jesus ascended, or after the last disciple kicked the bucket, right? That was pretty much the end, because they established that Jesus had come and here's the new Bible and all this stuff. I don't think that's what Jesus is saying. I think Jesus is saying, look, you or anybody who believes in me has this potential. This is available for everybody. This is the kind of faith that He wants us to have, that we would look at our world in a different way. He says anything is possible. If you believe, you can ask for anything, assuming that it's righteous, right? You can't help me rob the bank, Lord. It doesn't work that way. But assuming it's righteous and it's good, then anything is possible. And yet we get stuck in the doctrine of the Pharisees and the Sadducees because we have our systematic theology. And our systematic theology says, no, this can happen, and this can happen, and nothing else. We get lost in that. So we need to be careful to not get stuck in the doctrine of the Pharisees and the Sadducees or the Baptists or the Methodists or your church or my church, right? Let's not get stuck in our own theologies, but let's look at Jesus and what He did and what He said and look at through the entire Bible and see how He wants us to believe beyond what we see. Remember, it's not seeing is believing, but it's believing is seeing. That, I believe, is what Jesus wants us to get. Believing is seeing. But for so many theologians, be they Pharisees, Sadducees, Baptists, Methodists, Pentecostals, you name it, we often say, you and I, our theology comes down to seeing is believing when it really should be believing is seeing. That is how we're going to see incredible miracles. And again, you have to hang in there. That's where the faith comes in, because you can't see it, right? Something you can see, you don't require faith. Well, I can see, I've got a big fat check, or I've got that new thing, or I've got that thing that I've been praying for so long. I've got it in my hands. I can see it. Well, you don't need faith for that. The faith is when you continue to see it in your mind, you see it in your heart, even though you don't yet possess that thing. It hasn't materialized or actualized or been realized in your life just yet, but you hang in there and saying, you know what? I don't care if I can't even see it with my eyes and I can't sense it with my senses, but I'm going to believe because God said, Jesus said, if I believe, I will receive. Ask, seek, and knock. God has incredible things in store for us.